The day my father died, my older brother Ezra looked me straight in the eye across the polished mahogany table in our family lawyer's office and said the entire inheritance was his now because I was gay. I sat there stunned, the words hitting like a freight train, my hands gripping the arms of the leather chair, so hard my knuckles turned white while the lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly and slid the documents toward Ezra without meeting my gaze. 10 years later, I would sell every asset I had built from nothing just to pull that same brother back from the edge of ruin. But on that cold October morning in Austin, Texas, all I could feel was the floor dropping out from under me. I remember the way the sunlight slanted through the blinds, striping the room in gold and shadow, and how Ezra's face stayed perfectly composed. The same calm mask he'd worn since we were kids when he'd always been the responsible one. The golden boy who never disappointed our father. "It's what Dad wanted," he said quietly, not angry, just final, like the decision had already been made years ago and my coming out at 25 had simply confirmed it. Our mother had passed 5 years earlier, so there was no one left to argue on my side. The family real estate empire, the ranch outside the city, the investment accounts, everything that had been promised to both of us since birth now belonged solely to Ezra, because, in Dad's eyes, and apparently in the revised will no one had told me about, a gay son couldn't be trusted to carry the family name forward. I didn't shout. I didn't cry in front of them. I stood up, nodded once, and walked out into the humid Texas air with nothing but the clothes on my back and the old truck Dad had given me for my 18th birthday. The drive to the airport felt endless, the radio playing some country song about lost love that suddenly sounded like it was mocking me. By nightfall, I was on a one-way flight to New York, the city lights below sparkling like a promise I wasn't sure I believed anymore. The first months in the city were brutal. I crashed on a friend's couch in Brooklyn, took any job that paid, waited tables, stocked shelves at a hardware store, and taught myself coding at night in the dim light of a shared apartment. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every rejection letter from design firms reminded me of Ezra's calm voice. Every lonely night made me wonder if Dad had been right after all. But something stubborn inside me refused to break. I started freelancing small websites for local businesses, then bigger projects, until one day a tech startup founder noticed my clean, intuitive designs and offered me a full-time role with equity. I poured every waking hour into that company, building what would eventually become my own digital agency, specializing in inclusive branding. By the time I turned 32, I had a sleek loft in Williamsburg, a growing team of 12, and a reputation for campaigns that actually celebrated diversity instead of hiding it. I dated casually, nothing serious, because trust had become a luxury too. Then one rainy afternoon in a tiny coffee shop near the Brooklyn Bridge, I met Alex. He was sketching on a napkin, blonde hair falling into his eyes, laughing at something the barista said. And when our eyes met across the crowded room, it felt like the first honest thing that had happened to me in years. He was a graphic novelist working on his second book, quiet but fierce about his art. And for the first time since that lawyer's office, I let myself hope that maybe love didn't have to come with conditions. We talked for hours that day, about everything and nothing, and when he asked for my number, I gave it without hesitation. Walking home through the drizzle, I caught myself smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. Little did I know that the fragile peace I had built was about to be tested by a phone call I never expected. 6 months with Alex felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater. We spent weekends wandering through the Met, sharing street tacos in the East Village, and staying up late in my loft while he read me pages from his latest draft, and I showed him early mock-ups for client pitches. He never pushed when I avoided talking about Texas. He simply held my hand tighter when the nightmares came. His own family in California had been lukewarm about his sexuality at first, but eventually came around, sending care packages and asking when he'd bring me home for Thanksgiving. It made my chest ache in ways I couldn't explain. My agency was thriving too. We landed a major contract with a national nonprofit focused on LGBTQ youth, and the campaign I designed went viral, landing features in Adweek and a profile in the New York Times. Ezra's name never came up in conversations with my team, but late at night I still checked the family company's website out of habit, watching the stock ticker rise steadily under his leadership. Part of me hated that I still cared. Then came the first crack. Alex's best friend Marcus threw a birthday party in his spacious apartment in Manhattan, the kind with string lights and a playlist that mixed old soul with new indie. I was laughing at one of Marcus's terrible jokes when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The area code was Texas. I stepped outside onto the fire escape, the city noise fading behind me, and answered. Dylan. The voice was unfamiliar at first, then I placed it. Our old family lawyer. I'm sorry to call like this, but there's been some complications with the estate. Your brother asked me to reach out. My stomach tightened. Ezra asking for anything from me after all these years could only mean trouble. The lawyer explained quickly, a string of bad investments, a lawsuit from a former partner, and mounting medical bills from what sounded like stress-induced health issues Ezra was hiding from everyone. The empire Dad left him was crumbling, and Ezra was too proud to admit it publicly. I hung up without promising anything, but the conversation lodged in my chest like a stone. Back inside, Alex noticed immediately. You look like you saw a ghost, he said, sliding an arm around my waist. I forced a smile and told him it was just work stress. That night in bed, I stared at the ceiling while Alex slept beside me, his breathing steady and trusting. Telling him about Ezra would mean opening the door to the part of me I had locked away, and I wasn't ready for him to see how broken that door still was. The next few weeks blurred into a cycle of late nights at the office and early mornings pretending everything was fine. My loyal assistant, Priya, caught me staring at old photos on my phone one afternoon and gently asked if I was okay. She was the only person at the agency who knew my full story. I had confided in her during a late-night deadline pushed 2 years earlier. You don't owe him anything, Dylan, she said quietly. But the words rang hollow because deep down I knew blood still meant something, even when it hurt. Alex and I hit our first real rough patch around then. He sensed the distance and finally asked point-blank if I was hiding something. The argument that followed wasn't loud, but it cut deep. I can't keep guessing what walls you're keeping up, he said, voice cracking. I wanted to tell him everything right there, but the fear of seeing pity in his eyes stopped me cold. Instead, I apologized and promised I was just stressed about the new campaign. He accepted it, but I saw the doubt linger. Summer brought the kind of heat that made New York feel like it was melting. My agency won another award, and Alex's graphic novel hit the bestseller list. We celebrated with a weekend getaway to the Hamptons, renting a tiny cottage near the beach. Watching him run into the waves, laughing like the weight of the world had lifted, I almost told him about the lawyer's call. Almost. Back in the city, the misunderstandings piled up. Alex found an old letter from my mother I had kept hidden in a drawer, one where she begged me to try to be normal for Dad's sake. He didn't accuse me of anything, but the hurt in his eyes when he asked why I never shared it spoke volumes. I thought we were past secrets, he said softly. I tried to explain that some wounds were too ugly to show the person you loved, but the words came out wrong, and he left for the night, crashing at Marcus's place. The next morning, I showed up at his door with coffee and an apology that felt inadequate. We talked for hours on his tiny balcony overlooking the river, and for the first time, I let myself cry in front of him, telling him bits and pieces about the day Ezra took everything. Alex listened without interrupting, then pulled me into his arms and whispered that my past didn't scare him away. That night, we made love slowly, like we were rewriting every painful memory with something gentler. Work offered no escape. A major client pulled out at the last minute, citing brand alignment issues after learning about our nonprofit campaign. The loss stung, but it also forced me to confront how much of my success had been built on proving I was worthy despite who I was. Priya stayed late helping me pitch new clients, her steady presence a reminder that chosen family could be just as strong. Then the second call came. This time it was Ezra himself. His voice was thinner than I remembered, edged with exhaustion. Dylan, I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. The company is going under. There's a chance to save it, but I need capital fast. I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but you're the only one left. I listened in silence as he outlined the numbers, the lawsuits, the heart condition the doctors had warned him about if the stress continued. When he finished, I told him I needed time to think and hung up. That evening, Alex found me on the rooftop of my building, staring at the skyline. I finally told him everything. He didn't offer easy answers. Instead, he asked what I needed from him. His quiet support cracked something open inside me. For the first time in a decade, I felt like I wasn't facing the past alone. The decision didn't come in a single moment of clarity. It built slowly over sleepless nights and long conversations with Alex and Priya. Selling the agency I had poured my soul into would mean walking away from the life I had fought so hard to create. But every time I pictured Ezra alone in that big empty house in Texas, the same house where we had grown up racing bikes in the driveway, something inside me shifted. I met with my financial advisor on a humid August morning. The numbers were brutal. Liquidating everything, my shares, the loft, the retirement accounts, would generate just enough to cover Ezra's immediate debts and buy him time to restructure. Alex sat beside me holding my hand while the advisor laid out the risks. "You'd be starting over again," she warned. I nodded, throat tight, knowing exactly what starting over felt like. The paperwork took 3 weeks. During that time, I flew back to Austin for the first time in 10 years. The city felt smaller, the air thicker. Ezra met me at the airport looking 10 years older than he was, shoulders hunched in a way I had never seen. We didn't hug. We drove in silence to the family ranch, now half the size after some sales to cover earlier losses. Inside the house, the familiar smell of cedar and leather hit me like a wave. Over coffee at the kitchen table that still had the same scratch from when we were kids fighting over the last cookie, Ezra finally broke. "Dad changed the will the week after you came out." I knew it was wrong, but I was scared to lose everything too. Mom was already gone, and he made it clear it was either me or nothing. His voice cracked on the last word. I stared at the mug in my hands, the anger I had carried for a decade suddenly feeling heavy and useless. Back in New York, the closing papers arrived by courier. I signed them in the living room while Alex cooked dinner, the scent of garlic and basil filling the loft one last time. The sale went through quietly. My team received generous severance and references. A few even chose to follow the new owners. Priya hugged me tight and whispered she was proud of me. The money wired to Ezra's accounts the next morning. I didn't call to confirm. Instead, I sat on the floor of the empty loft surrounded by boxes and let myself feel the full weight of what I had done. Alex found me there, pulled me up, and held me while I finally let the tears come. The first month without the agency felt like free fall. I took freelance gigs to keep busy, working from coffee shops while Alex wrote at the kitchen table of the small one-bedroom we rented in Queens. Money was tight, but the quiet was healing in unexpected ways. Ezra called every Sunday now, short, awkward conversations that slowly grew longer. He told me about starting therapy, about the heart monitor he had to wear, about the new smaller company he was trying to rebuild on his own terms. I listened without offering advice, just presence. One crisp October afternoon, Alex and I took the train to Central Park. We sat on a bench near the lake watching the leaves turn gold. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "Not for the money, but for choosing to be the man your father never let you be." His words settled over me like a warm blanket. That night we cooked together in our tiny kitchen, laughing when the pasta boiled over, and for the first time the future felt wide open instead of terrifying. The real turning point came in November. Ezra flew to New York unannounced. He showed up at our door with a duffel bag and the same hesitant expression he'd worn as a kid when he broke my favorite toy. Over takeout Thai food, he told us the full story, the pressure Dad had put on him to marry, produce heirs, keep the family image intact. I was terrified of disappointing him, Ezra admitted. But I was more terrified of becoming him. Alex listened quietly, then asked Ezra what he wanted now. The question hung in the air until Ezra looked straight at me and said, "A brother who doesn't hate me." We didn't fix everything that night, but we started. Ezra stayed on our couch for a week. We walked the High Line, visited the agency's old building now under new management, and talked about the father we both lost in different ways. On his last day, Ezra hugged me at the airport, a real hug this time, and whispered thank you. Watching his plane disappear into the clouds, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Spring arrived with soft rain and new beginnings. I launched a small solo studio focused on mentorship for young LGBTQ designers, using the lessons from my own journey. Alex's third graphic novel was optioned for a film, and we celebrated with a quiet dinner where he slid a simple silver ring across the table. "Not a proposal yet," he said with that crooked smile I loved. just a promise that we keep choosing each other. I slipped it on and kissed him right there in the restaurant, not caring who saw. Ezra visited again in May, this time with his new partner, a kind woman who worked in nonprofit finance and made him laugh in ways I hadn't heard since we were kids. We spent the weekend at a cabin upstate, grilling burgers and sharing stories around the fire pit. The old wounds were still there, faint scars instead of open gashes. Ezra apologized again, not for show, but because he meant it. I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because holding on to hate had cost me too much already. Sitting on the porch that last evening watching fireflies dance over the lake, I realized the journey hadn't been about losing everything or saving my brother. It had been about finding myself in the wreckage and choosing love anyway, messy and imperfect as it was. Alex's hand found mine in the dark, warm and steady, while Ezra raised his glass in a silent toast across the fire. Some nights I still dream about that lawyer's office, but now I wake up to Alex's breathing and the faint sound of Ezra's voice on the phone checking in. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine, built on choices I can finally stand behind. True or false? Blood is always thicker than the pain caused by prejudice, and forgiveness is the only way forward when family betrays you for being who you are.